Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here's your host, Joe Kuzma and Brian E. Roach.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. My name is Joe Kuzma, wishing everyone a belated Happy St. Patrick's Day on behalf of the Steelers, the official whatever of Ireland, and they'll be there this year.
Right.
So I felt it was very festive.
The official team of St. Patrick's Day.
The official team.
And top of the morning to you, me young laddie. And may the road rise to meet you and your ass not fall off of your butt.
And the guy wishing that everyone's ass doesn't fall off their butt. One Mr. Brian E. Roach, straight out of Dublin, maybe. We'll say that. We'll spice it up a little bit, but flipping back and forth. I did not participate in any of the drinking festivities yesterday. That was just because I got too busy. I had some friends that wanted me to go hang out with them, and it just didn't work out. So no, I'm not drunk clicking and moving around here and being frantic. We just have some exciting things to talk about. And I thought it was a little festive to at least wear the DMR thing. I miss seeing this logo around. It was pretty cool.
Yes.
It was on the jerseys, albeit for a somber reason. But we need to start the show we didn't recognize a somber moment last week, which was kind of breaking news in the moment when we went on the air. Rest in peace to Craig Wolfley, along with Tunch Ilkin. We were very happy to have crossed paths with both of those guys in the past, and they were very helpful to, our endeavors here. So Craig was good people. He was loved by everyone. That's, even for somebody as lowly as us that maybe got to rub elbows with a Craig Wolfley or Tunch Ilkin. Those guys always treated us first class. So he will sorely be missed.
Yep. I couldn't agree more.
Yep. And, it's tough to start a show like that and then just jump into, let's crap all over this quarterback situation, but that's kind of where we're at. There's not a lot of free agency activity in Steelers land. I mean, you got Isaiah Loudermilk coming back. You got Juan Thornhill, who's, a 30-something kind of reserve safety, formerly of the Browns, formerly of the Chiefs. Yeah. These are some depth signings. I know we're still looking for that defensive lineman, but maybe they don't want to take the reps away from Keanu Benton. Fair enough. If Keanu Benton's the guy, Brian, we just we want to preserve who has been an ageless Cam Hayward for a while here, but he's not going to be ageless forever. So that's one thing we're looking at. But geez, there is one glaring hole that's here. And I made a comment. I don't know. There's a position. I think it's an important one.
Is it? Are you sure? Maybe it's the least important position in today's NFL.
Might be. I know you were saying I don't agree with everything you wrote, or maybe anything I wrote, which is weird. We do agree quite a bit, but I had an article, and this is kind of a companion show to it, about the Steelers' plans at the quarterback position, because quite frankly, I'm getting tired of people saying, well, they passed on, or, Justin Fields moved on their own. Look, we don't know what happens behind these closed doors and these discussions, but the reason I pitched that the Steelers' plan may have involved drafting a quarterback this year is for a variety of reasons, and I think it's why some of the veteran quarterbacks, aside from money, are still sitting around out there. So we've got some names to throw out here. We've got Justin Fields, we've got Russell Wilson, we've got Aaron Rodgers, and we've got a media, local and national, that they see certain players that are available, they see certain players that have contracts that are up, and they see teams that have holes. They have a need at certain positions, and then they try and connect dots. And you've got this whole underlying underground of sports agents trying to up the market for their clientele and maybe create a sense of demand. And they could very much so easily do that when they get somebody like you or I, or, other people out there to do the same thing we do, to talk about it. And then all of a sudden it's like, hey, look, the Raiders have a spot. They might be interested in Justin or in Russell Wilson because Pete Carroll used to coach him and blah, blah, blah. And they start, doing the whole Charlie Day thing in Pacific Rim, where there's all of the nonsensical lines drawing to everything in order to come to your conclusion. That's where we're at on the ride right here, because despite what we said last week, and I even said I thought the ship sailed. I was quite pleasantly surprised to see that Mason Rudolph returning to the Pittsburgh Steelers, a 2-year deal. Not a lot of money, but he's coming back, and I was surprised by the most part that Steelers Nation is more welcoming to the idea of Mason Rudolph playing quarterback now than all those other years that he was here. So I like seeing the positive outlook, but could they realistically, and you know why it is, Brian, and I know you're giggling,
I do know why it is.
Yeah, because I defended this guy forever and everybody kind of just shat on him, and his numbers aren't too far off from the other guys that have been here, like Mitch Trubisky or Kenny Pickett or even Justin Fields. So
here's why people are okay with it. Their last memories of Mason Rudolph in his Steelers uniform are a wonderful little winning streak to get them into the playoffs. Even though they lost in Buffalo, nobody expected them to really win that game, right? So Mason took a team that was floundering and looked like it was going to sink and provided some spark when we'd had none all year long under Kenny Pickett and Mitch. And that's the last remembrance that Steelers Nation has of Mason Rudolph, right? Because nobody paid attention to what he did in Tennessee last year. They're not looking at Tennessee games and going, "Oh yeah, Mason Rudolph's our guy." And if they are, they're making a mistake.
Well,
but Tennessee was not good. Let's be clear. Tennessee was not a good team. So he has more weapons around him than he had when he was here before. I am my opinion on Mason Rudolph. Perfectly fine backup quarterback. That's my opinion on Mason Rudolph. But I'm also of the opinion that we need to stink this year. So I'm good with Mason Rudolph.
Okay, why do we need to stink this year? Here's the problem. Well, you got a good problem, maybe. And this is the Steelers fumble their plan, and we are making a lot of assumptions about what their plan may have been. Now, their plan may have been Justin Fields and not Mason Rudolph. Let's cover Mason Rudolph real quick. Like you said, he went to Tennessee. By the time he wasn't the starter there initially.
He was not.
He traded some time because Will Levis was, got drafted.
Hey.
He has not been good. He's not ready. He may never be good. Okay, this is the gamble that you take with quarterbacks. When you draft them, it's a lottery ticket. I'm just going to keep referring to the Powerball because you have about that many odds when it's not this one guy like a Joe Burrow, like an Andrew Luck or somebody and it could be Marcus Mariota. It's still a lottery ticket because we see how that may or may not have worked out. So it depends on the year. It depends on the class, depends on the pedigree of that player. But outside of that top number 1 overall pick, it doesn't always work. Jaden Daniels was a number 2. Okay, we'll leave it at that, right? Do we know that Drake May is going to be a dude in the NFL? We don't know that. So there's still some time to find out. What I'm trying to think of here is, number 1, bringing Mason back, right? That's probably a good thing. I think Tennessee did sign somebody else instead of Mason, and it was going to be a crowded room, and there's still Will Levis, and they still have the top pick. They could go quarterback. So for Mason, it's a smart move. For Mason to have left for a year and sit under Brian Callahan, maybe as he's an offensive guru. He was the offensive coordinator for Joe Burrow and company in Cincinnati. Probably good experience for him. Maybe not the best of experience when they trade away DeAndre Hopkins and he has nobody to throw the ball to, and that offensive line was woof. And you could see the money and everything else that they put into that. But he comes back, and it still wasn't all that terrible. It's about what you would expect from somebody like a Mason Rudolph. By all means, I'm not saying that he's going to be the second coming, that he's going to be the big Ben Roethlisberger, but I think, and there's some jokes about Ben returning too, and it's like at his age, his accelerated age, probably not, but I do kind of look around before we get to Fields, and I kind of wonder, it's like, number 1, you don't have much on the airwaves about Russell Wilson. He's going everywhere else. He's going to Cleveland. He's going to the New York Giants. He's taking these meetings. And if the Steelers were really that serious in acquiring him, or Aaron Rodgers for that matter, then do you really believe that Omar Khan isn't that aggressive of a guy that the deals would have already been done if they felt that was the path they were going to go, the guy they were going to go with? So everyone just assumes Aaron Rodgers will eventually sign with the Steelers. What happens when he doesn't? What happens if he retires? What happens if he goes to the Vikings? What if Wilson already signed somewhere else and you're stuck with Mason Rudolph? what was their plan at quarterback? It doesn't appear to me that Wilson and Rodgers were their initial plan. So I'll kick it over to you because you felt that Justin Fields was their original plan.
That's exactly what I think. I think Justin Fields was their original plan under their, guidelines, right? That Justin Fields was who they wanted to roll with, understanding probably that Justin Fields wasn't the guy, right? Knowing that what they need is somebody to get them through this year and potentially next year, or, get them to the point where they can draft their next guy. None of the people you mentioned are the next guy, right? That's almost a certainty. But with Justin Fields, there was still that lingering glimmer of potential because he was young, because he was fast, because he had legs that he could run. So there were things that they could sort of say, all right, maybe. But guarantee you, Aaron Rodgers was not on their plan, not from the get-go. I just don't believe that for a second. I do believe they absolutely made Aaron Rodgers an offer. I believe they made the offer, and that's the end of it, right? Because Justin Fields went to the Jets for it, and it isn't that the Steelers are cheap. It isn't anything like that. It's if he's not the guy, don't overspend for him, right? What I believe their plan at quarterback was, which is why the general theme of the show, did the Steelers fumble their plans at quarterback? No, I think that their plan was get to 2026 draft, right? Whatever we end up doing is whatever we end up doing. Get us in a position where when the draft is being held in Pittsburgh, we can try and figure out whether our quarterback is there and then figure out how do we go get him, right? That's what I believe the plan was. So did they screw that up? Absolutely not. They haven't screwed that up, right? What they're in a position to be is relying on a second tier or backup quarterback to get them through next year, which I think was the plan all along. They didn't know who it was going to be. They wanted it to be Justin Fields. Didn't work out. And forget the idea that Justin Fields was maybe going to turn into this superstar. Hey, look, if 2 years down the road, the Jets have won a Super Bowl and he's turned into, the second coming there, I'll eat my words. I don't buy that for a second. I don't think that's what's going to happen. For Justin Fields' sake, hey, I hope he does. I hope he does great. I bear him no ill will, but I don't believe that's what's going to happen. And I don't think the Steelers thought that either. What they thought was, here's a guy that's been in our offense for a year, who Arthur has some familiarity with, and we'd like to just maintain that consistency going forward for a couple years. We're going to do it under our rules, though. And our rules were, we're only going to offer this much money for this position because we want to be able to invest other places. We want to be able to beef up other things.
Yes.
And then take advantage of a rookie deal for a rookie quarterback and put ourselves in a position to have that person surrounded by the most options for success. That's what I believe the plan was. I don't believe the plan was, okay, we're going to just lowball Justin Fields, and if he doesn't come, we're going to go to Aaron Rodgers. They wanted Justin Fields. They wanted him at their number. He got a better offer. They said, that's very nice. Thank you very much. We're not going to pay more than what we said. And I also believe, you and I have talked about this, I don't believe he was guaranteed to the starting position. He was guaranteed to be in the room for the number that he had. Probably he was going to be the starting quarterback because I don't think they were going to get a rookie quarterback this year that was going to threaten him. But you never know. You never know. Even though this is maybe this much better than the Kenny Pickett class, it ain't a good quarterback class. That doesn't mean one of these guys doesn't, buck the odds and turn into somebody, right? It just, from analysis, it doesn't look like there's a lot of potential or a lot of really surefire guys in this draft. There's guys, I shouldn't say potential. There's guys with potential, but Justin Fields has potential, right? Drake May Will Levi Strauss, had potential. But potential doesn't always turn into anything. So do I think that Justin Fields was the plan? Yes, I think Justin Fields was the plan. When that part of the plan didn't work out, they said, okay, what's available out there? Okay, what's Sam Darnold going to cost us? That's too much. Plus, he went and signed for $100 million someplace else. Forget that. I do think they didn't want Russell Wilson back. I don't think they want Russell Wilson back right now. If Russell Wilson doesn't sign anywhere and they don't get Aaron Rodgers, I don't think Russell Wilson ends up in Pittsburgh. I think it's Mason and somebody else, Kyle Allen or some other backup. Maybe, Gardner, who knows? I don't know. I don't want to talk about porn stash guy, but, I think they're going to, that's what it is. They just want somebody that they can get through the next couple of years with. And I think Mason's perfectly capable of being that guy if you're not counting on him to make you a championship caliber team.
And you mentioned a lot of things that I was going to mention too. I said to start writing some notes. One of them is, Mason could be that guy and what could be that guy and who Mason and who, but I'll come back around to that because there was a couple really good points about Steelers being cheap and Steelers, and Sam Darnold. So I want to throw that out there, whether or not there's interest in Aaron Rodgers or Russell Wilson, or whether this is just stuff that's been floated out there by, we've got a national media that runs around and, they see, well, this team, they have a vacancy in this position. And then there's this player that's homeless right now, and we're going to connect these dots, and that might be a fit. And that's where you get some of this from. You've got plenty of shows on ESPN and Fox Sports and NFL Network and all these things where, we try to make the same assumptions too. We looked at free agency and said, these are the players that might be available, and the Steelers may have some availability in these spots. So when you're looking at that and you see Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson are out there and they have not signed with someone else, of course, you're going to link that together. Now, you only have really one local guy that I saw for certain that was talking that Aaron Rodgers or whatever offer or whatever may have been out there. But I was thinking about this when you mentioned Sam Darnold, especially. And we're talking about, when we were talking about this before this show or before free agency, we said, would you bring Russell Wilson back? And you said, only if the price is right. And you look at what these escalated quarterback contracts are, and we're talking about at least $30 million a year. And you're starting to pay wide receivers that. And to think that the Steelers are cheap when Omar Khan went out, and he's, as I've said, he's aggressive. I didn't give the examples. Aggressive. Trade Chase Claypool, end up with this high pick from the Chicago Bears. Go out and move up in the draft for Broderick Jones. Go out and get Russell Wilson first thing. Send Kenny Pickett packing. Go get Justin Fields. These are aggressive moves. DK Metcalf, bringing him in and giving him this large deal is the opposite of cheap or being passive. Are they being passive at the quarterback position? Yes, because what's there isn't necessarily what they want to do. They don't want to. I guarantee you that Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers saw Sam Darnold sign 3 years, $100 million, and said, "Look at our resumes. We have a ring on our finger. We have been there. We've done that. We still have something we can offer. We don't want to just be here for 1 year. We don't want to be looking over our shoulder at whoever the next guy is. But you got to pay us $30 million, $33 million, $35, $36." The more and more the teams aren't jumping to sign those guys, that it will eventually come down. So now you get some of the stories that go out there. I kind of wonder about if any of the stuff, very, very little about Wilson maybe coming back to Pittsburgh. And I think that's a preference of maybe the way Wilson was with some of the media people, maybe what some of the media people want to put out there, depending on their sources. But there was a lot on the Justin Fields side of things. And, Art Rooney II came out and said, I would like to have one of the two guys back, maybe not both of them. Some of that's also just, more of that gamesmanship, just that, I don't want to say coach speak because he's the owner, so it's owner speak. You're not going to say something bad about them, but you're going to leave the door open. You're not going to say, well, this guy sucked. We don't want him back whatsoever. And I don't even think the Cleveland Browns have officially said that about Deshaun Watson, even though that might be true, because they might be stuck with him. I mean, the 49ers had to go back to Jimmy Garoppolo several years ago. They didn't even bring him to training camp. They were ready to release him, and then, I forget, somebody got hurt, he ends up playing again, and, almost saves the team. They don't want to put $30 million to $40 million to $50 million on a quarterback that's not a long-term prospect. The guys that are out there are not long-term, not Mason Rudolph, the guy they just signed. Although, depending on who it is with Mason, I don't think it's going to be Skylar Thompson. He's under a futures reserves, but he has experience. Mike Tomlin likes to bring in guys that have a little bit of experience. They've been in another system. He even kicked the tires on Paxton Lynch and Zach Mettenberger before. So this isn't anything new from an organization standpoint. Bringing in Justin Fields and Mitch Trubisky and guys like that are along the same lines, although they were first-round picks. Maybe they weren't a bust. Maybe they're in a bad situation. Let's see if the grass is greener. But I do think whatever was offered to Justin Fields, it could have been a sticking point on guaranteed money and opportunity. If the Steelers go out there and do what the Atlanta Falcons did last year and they make a big headline signing like they did for Kirk Cousins, the Steelers go and do that with Russell Wilson or Aaron Rodgers. 3 years, $100 million. Then they turn around and they draft Jackson Dart. All of a sudden, everybody's going to be like, huh? What? But that might have been part of their plan. Just because we don't like the quarterback draft class, just because it may not look like the strongest quarterback draft class this year, does not mean that the Steelers feel that same way. There might be some intangibles, and they might also feel this is a draft, just like with Kenny Pickett. Again, lottery ticket, 1 in a million shot, right? Kenny Pickett falls in your lap. He's the top guy in the class. Nobody else is taking a quarterback. You're taking a shot. Is it worth taking a first-round pick? There's teams that are giving away 3 first-round picks and then some, and players and everything else just to get their opportunity to try and win this lottery, and then they go bust sometimes. We've mentioned them millions and millions of times all the way through the Ben Roethlisberger thing. So as far as the plans, I don't know that they are fumbling any plans. Like you said, I don't know that Wilson was necessarily the plan. Maybe Fields was, but Fields knew that maybe they were looking at somebody else. He would have to compete. He goes to the Jets. There's no guarantee the Jets won't take someone too, but there's $30 million in guarantees that says a little bit differently. It's not the Steelers being cheap, but it is allocating the money to people like DK Metcalf that will make that eventual quarterback in that offense better whenever you end up getting the quarterback position solved.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't want to keep belaboring the same points, but Justin Fields was not going to be the guy long term. Is that 100%
let's
certainty?
Talk about that.
No.
Let's talk about that real quick. Not to just cut you off or say we're beating a dead horse, but why do we keep saying that? Because even the Jets on a 2-year deal and what little he got, it screams like if this works out, then it works out. But the Steelers have already gotten that opportunity last year. They had a free trial of Justin Fields because Russell Wilson was hurt. Fields was brought in to replace Kenny Pickett. It was never really said he was competing for the job, right? It was alluded to that Russell Wilson was in the pole position. He was the starter. And Tomlin, he screwed that up even more. Maybe he was just trying to game people. He knew Wilson wasn't going to be ready, make the Falcons prepare for 2 quarterbacks, but it took forever to name who the starter was week 1, right? But Fields wasn't supposed to be the week 1 starter. Wilson was hurt. That's the reason we got it through 6 weeks. Tomlin, he's this guy that if you get hurt, you're not going to lose your job, right? And he puts Wilson back in, and you never see Fields again, because I don't think Fields was the plan. But they got that free trial. Instead of having to sign him this year and then go through camp, go through preseason, play some of the regular season games, and all of a sudden, we lose a game to the Colts. We lose a game to the Cowboys. The quarterback is struggling against the Raiders, but we pulled this one out. You don't have another option other than Justin Fields now. You know what I mean? Going forward, unless their plan was maybe to draft somebody, and maybe that... I still don't see a rookie starting in this position. It's probably the same thing as Trubisky playing over Pickett. It's probably the same kind of thing over and over. But that's where I'm kind of thinking maybe that was their plan. And with the Fields thing, they were like, well, for what we already know he can do, we can find that somewhere else. But Mason can do a lot of these same things. Maybe not run around, but throw the ball and move the offense a little bit. He could do these same things. I hate using the name bridge quarterback. I hate it. I think it's just whatever it is. But it really is. It is what it is. It is. You're building that bridge to whomever the next guy might be, and everybody we've discussed is probably a bridge to that next guy, whomever that might be.
Yeah, like I'm gonna go back to Justin one more time.
By all means, keep doing it.
The thing here is Justin, he played okay, but during forget I get it. He had a winning record, and people. Here's what I hate. I hate revisionist history. I really loathe when people go back and attempt to rewrite history to fit the narrative that they are trying to speak now. Justin Fields was not good in the games he played in. He wasn't horrible, but he by no means was lighting the world on fire.
Mm-hmm.
They made the switch to Russ, and everybody complained. Oh my God, how can you sit Justin Fields? He's got a winning record. And they shut up in 2 games. Why? Because the offense looked better, right? The offense looked live. The offense was scoring points. And yeah, by the time they hit the road grader that was the end of their season, Russ looked pedestrian, and so did the offense. But so did the defense. The whole team looked bad. All right? But to try and go back and say Justin was the guy, and how could they treat him so bad? It's no different than Charlie Batch starting the season because Ben's hurt. All right, and getting them through the first 3-4 games, whatever it was, and then Ben comes back. Russ was the starter. Justin did a nice job. When Russ is ready to go, he's gonna play. That's just the way it works, right? Okay, so that being said, they saw enough in Justin, right? And maybe all the noise about there was some conflict, and Arthur doesn't like Russ doing certain things, and he doesn't fit what Arthur really wants to do. Who knows if there's any truth to any of that, right? But I do think that they simply said, we saw enough out of Justin to know that we can put together a team to play, right? And we can be maybe competitive. This is where I fall through on the plan, right? To me, the plan is like, I don't really care. I don't care if you're competitive or not right now. I don't care because you're not a Super Bowl championship level team right now. You might have certain players who are championship caliber players. It's a possibility your defense ends up being a championship caliber defense. Your offense is not championship caliber right now, and you're not going to win a championship unless the hell freezes over. And it is so, to me, I don't really care if you're competitive. I'm quite content, and I've said it multiple times, if we go 0-17 next year and have the first pick in the draft, because now we can take whoever the hell we want, right, and build around that person. If in fact the best quarterback, who knows? Right now, we all project next year's quarterback class is much better than this year's quarterback class. By the time we get through the college season, we might change our minds.
We might. We don't know about Arch Manning, or we don't know. Nobody's really looking favorably on Quinn Ewers. And what's his name? Aller went back to Penn State instead of coming out this year, and so you might have some guys like that, and you have the unknowns like a Will Howard or Kyle McCord coming out this year, and it could be like Desmond Ridder or Spencer Rattler, or there's like some of the names that you're, enamored with during this whole draft process. And we've done this for years. And it's like, remember Matt Corral and Sam Howell? And it's like, they just, fizzle and fade out after all the mock draft insanities are done with. But you're absolutely right on, the recency bias, or the last good thing you remember. A lot of people remember the good things about Mason. I didn't think there was a lot of bad things with Mason. I saw somebody say, go sign Duck. And I'm like, that dude threw 6 picks in the last 3 games that year, and they still nearly made the playoffs. Will they ever stink enough? Because they almost did it with,
that's the real question.
Duck and Mason.
Can they stink enough?
That's what you said before. And it's like, but okay, are they going to win a playoff game? Well, it's not happening with a Trubisky, with a Pickett, with any of these other guys. So why not just stick with Mason and see what you could put around him? And if you happen to have a QB fall in your lap this year, so be it. And if, Tomlin does his wizardry or whatever, and if you stink, then you end up, nobody wants to stink though. They don't have the patience to want to wait a full year plus to wait for that quarterback to then come out there.
I want to stink. I really want to stink.
No fan
I
ever
want
wants
to stink. Of course I don't want to stink. Right. But I do get the point of, if you need to be in the position to try and draft the guy you want, so that for multiple reasons. if you aren't, that means you have to give up capital for the years moving forward to get where you want to be, right? I don't want to give up 2 first-round picks to move up to get the quarterback that I want. I don't want to have to then essentially invest 3 first-round picks in this guy because it is a lottery, right? Even if he's the best, highest graded quarterback, and everybody is certain he's going to be, surefire Hall of Famer, he could suck. You never know what could happen. So I don't want to invest that kind of draft capital because it hamstrings you, right? It puts you in a position where now you don't have the ability to surround that guy with the same kind of young talent you want to be able to surround that person with. So look, I'm okay. Do I want them to stink? No, I'm okay if they stink.
Yeah, and a lot of it is the succession plans too that people come out and they start talking about. Well, they should have planned better. They should have got somebody when Roethlisberger was still here, and it's like, but when they did, it was a wasted 4th round pick. They said for Josh Dobbs because you're absolutely going to go out and you're going to find another Martavis Bryant. They just grow on trees apparently. Good players in the middle rounds, you know what I mean? They never luck out just finding some good players or role players or whatever. While you can find those players, it's not a given. Nothing in the draft is ever a given. And everybody mentions
not even close.
Everybody mentions Green Bay, but we don't really know. And the money that got tied into Jordan Love already, there's no guarantees that Jordan Love is going to. He had a pretty solid season last year. Can he repeat that? He didn't do it up until this point, but they moved on from Aaron Rodgers. We thought prematurely. Maybe they knew something we didn't. And they did that with Brett Favre before because Rodgers fell in their lap when Brett Favre was still there. And Green Bay seems to have it figured out. And it's like, well, maybe they do, maybe they don't.
Well,
maybe they get lucky.
Raise my hand.
Yeah.
Who thought they got rid of Aaron Rodgers too soon? I don't think I thought that.
No, but I think nobody thought that at the time. Now you're looking back on it and thinking, well, maybe they did know that they got rid of him just then.
Look, you mentioned Favre and Rodgers, right? Favre and Rodgers and Joe Montana and Steve Young. Name me other succession plans that were of the same caliber.
Steve Young wasn't even drafted to San Francisco.
I get it, but that's the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah.
It's not easy to sit there and find yourself in a position where you have a franchise level quarterback as your starter right now, and the guy is sitting on the bench for a couple years. That is very, very, very rare. Most teams get their guy, and when that guy leaves, they stinketh up the place for a series of years trying to find the next guy. And very few are just instantly transitioned. That's a rarity. And so to the whole concept of succession plans, the whole concept that you should have drafted Lamar Jackson,
in Jalen Hurts
when you had the chance, or Jalen Hurts when you had the chance. They're
never getting on the field.
And even regardless of that, right? Because the Steelers do. I've said it. I said it when Ben was at the end of his career. They did allow him to play out his career when they probably should have played hardball and just said, no, you're washed, we're done. But there's no guarantee that Lamar Jackson is Lamar Jackson with the Steelers. There's no guarantee that the coaching staff was, able to do the things they want. There's no guarantee that the team surrounding him was able to give him the same level of talent and the same level of success that he ended up with the Ravens, right? We've had issues at the offensive line for years now. We have not. It's been a while since we had a really overwhelmingly powerful offensive line. All of these things are crapshoots, right? They're just crapshoots. And saying woulda, shoulda, coulda, again, it's revisionist history. You just don't know. They fell things the way they fell. This is the boat you find yourself in right now. It is. I always believe this. It is pointless to bemoan things that happened in the past that you can't change. It is absolutely pointless to sit in your office or your house or your car and go, oh, we should have done this and we should have done that. Who cares? We didn't. It's over. now let's look forward and say, what should we do now and move forward? We don't, and even that is pointless for us as fans. We have no power.
Yes.
We don't get to make those choices, right? We can say what we'd like them to do. I just hate going back and revisiting the past to the point of saying, if only. Like, if that's going to be the case, let's just go back. If only we drafted Dan Marino. And I know people still do that. If only. Well, it is what it is. Those things happened. Get over it. Let's move forward.
Yeah, and again, where Marino's success was, like 1984, that might have been it. They might have still been bad through the rest of it, right? So,
Yep.
like, you take a look at, who was that draft? Gabe Rivera, and he didn't end up playing very long, a tragic accident, and you still wouldn't have had Gabe Rivera. You would have had Dan Marino at least, but then, okay, Louis Lips still goes for 1,000 yards every season or whatever, but Huey Richardson or whoever else, Tim Worley, and some of the other poor draft picks that came through the door aren't helping their cause too much. Maybe Cower is a little more successful with a Dan Marino than a he who shall not be named, guy from Super Bowl 30 that went to the Jets as well. Them Jets, they're always doing something, right? So
I was okay with that one.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think people. Well, see, that's another thing that's like real recency bias. The big games, people really hated Neal. They still have a thing out for Cordell Stewart. And you know what? We don't talk about those quarterbacks. It's all Bradshaw and Ben. Nobody talks about anybody else, really. And I mean, with good reason, those are the two big franchise guys. But the other two had some modicum of success here or there. They just, didn't get the big over the hump for the big game or whatever. Since we got Ben on the brain, I was thinking this too. It's like, you mentioned about bringing guys back or signing guys. Like Charlie Batch was very firmly not in the area of having offers to be a starting quarterback anywhere else. He was entrenched as being a backup where Fields, this may have been his last hacienda as far as maybe getting feelers somewhere else. And with the way it was in Pittsburgh, people are saying, oh, he mishandled it. And yeah, he played the first 6 games. He was 4-2. So was Kenny Pickett the year before that. And I got some numbers to also back up my talk earlier about Mason Rudolph versus Justin Fields. But when you're looking at the production and you're like, okay, the production of what Fields is. And of course, as a quarterback, as a running back, Fields, everybody thinks he's Lamar Jackson. Everybody thinks he's Jalen Hurts. He's had 15 of his 44 games with a rushing TD. He does some stuff with that, but he's only had 5 games with 100 yards rushing. He's not like Lamar. Lamar's doing it like a running back. And he had 15 or 5 of those 100-yard rushing games. He didn't even score a touchdown. That's just him running around, for his life. Him and Russell Wilson last year. I mean, anybody you put behind this line. But if you draft another quarterback to put behind Ben, not only are they not playing, you're not putting somebody else out on the field. And I understand that some of these the second round picks are usually pretty solid for the Steelers, right? But the first round picks, they've been dicey, like a Terrell Edmonds. But you got a 4-year rookie contract, a 5th-year option if they're a first rounder. If they're not a first rounder, and it's just 4 years, they're gone. Like 2022, you're going to have to throw the money out there like a Jordan Love. And the Steelers may have learned their lesson. That final season with Ben and asking him to take a pay cut, and he was down to $35 million. He had a $40 million cap hit. They don't want to do that again with Aaron Rodgers. What's the point of having a rookie quarterback contract if you still got like dead cap and void contract years of millions of dollars, which you're going to see the Cincinnati Bengals right now with signing both of those receivers, Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, and they're making north of $30 million a piece, with Chase being the highest non-quarterback contract in NFL history. Holy smokes, man. How are you going to find players to put around them? I saw some report or some article. The Bengals know that they must scout and nail every draft pick. Yeah, no kidding. Because if they don't,
yeah, duh.
they're going to have to pick up street free agents. And it's going to be a nightmare. They might, I think it was Mark Caboli, formerly of The Athletic, that said something like, might have to put up 70 points in order to compete with the Bengals. But that might not be hard to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, they might not have a defense. So when you're looking at what you were just paying Ben 3-4 years ago, and you're looking at Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson, and that Darnold contract's 3 for $100, and they're like, nope, we're not going to take anything less than 30 to 35 million. And you're just like, wow, we just did this. We're not going to do this again. We've been lucky. The reason we are not in complete shambles is because we got Russell Wilson for like $1.25 because Denver was paying him last year. If he wanted 40 last year, they probably don't sign him then either.
They don't sign him.
Yeah,
100%.
you don't even bring him in, but you're going to kick the tires players, at least, and give an opportunity. Justin Fields' market wasn't there. It was pretty much the only offer the Steelers had. Everybody was penciling him in. The Cleveland Browns are interested. The Raiders are interested. All these teams last year. And you knew that the Bears were lame ducks. They were going to take Caleb Williams. They had the top overall pick. They had said, we're getting rid of Justin Fields. And somebody's going to come and jump in the comments and say, well, Fields' agent said that they did whatever with his wishes and where he wanted to go. And it's really the only 6th round pick. You mean to tell me nobody else was willing to offer more than the 6? It sounded like the only offer that was out there. It was the only option, the only place to go. And maybe he's able to compete, or maybe he's able to get a chance to be a starter, and based on the opportunities last year. Now, this year, better opportunity for him to go to the Jets. I don't know how that's going to turn out. But Justin Fields' first 6 starts, the 4-2 start, right? He lost 2 of his last 3 games. So the recency bias still doesn't just sit well with me. In that Raiders game we always bring up, yeah, whatever. But Rudolph, 4 games, including the Buffalo playoff game, and the 3 to finish the regular season. You know, he went 3-1, losing the playoff game against the Bills. So he's 3-1 against 4-2. He had 50 fewer pass attempts than Justin Fields, about 250, if I'm doing the math correctly. No, 150 fewer yards passing on 50 fewer attempts. You know, he could probably do that in 2 games. He probably throws more. He probably throws 25 apiece, because his yards per attempt were 8.5 to 6.9. I'd usually say nice, but 6.9, very kind of middle ground. They both threw 5 touchdowns to 1 interception. Justin took 16 sacks to Rudolph taking 6. And then Rudolph, I think all 3 fumbles were in that Baltimore game in the rain, if I'm not mistaken. But he had a 106.1 rating to Fields' 93.9. People were going to think we're crazy when you were saying, well, most of Fields' games weren't that great. Chargers game, that was it. When we saw the Chargers game, we're like, uh-oh. You know, after 2, this is the 3rd game. He gets to play in front of a home crowd. We want to see more of this. And we didn't. And that's where it kind of cooled its heels there. I'm not going to say that Mason's going to bring a higher floor than this, but it's so shocking to me. I'm going to pull up the sack percentages, because we knew headed into last year, Russell Wilson started doing it toward the end of the year. That's why he threw picks. That's why there was, he got the ball popped out, ball security issue a little bit. He wasn't fumbling the snaps like Justin was. But the sack percentages and holding on to the football, getting rid of it, taking too long to make those reads, it was just a killer. It's just a killer. And it was something that was very hard, or would handicap the team. You look at the negative plays, the turnovers. You fumble, even if you don't lose the fumble, you're losing yards. And now it's 2nd or 3rd and long. And then basically you run a halfback draw because it's 3rd and 20, and you end up punting, versus, you would have had if the play was executed properly, you either have a first down, maybe you have a 3rd and short. Also was a problem last year, right? So that's where I'm at with Fields. The sack numbers, I'm trying to just get this to load up on the screen here. And it was, I thought I had it here. I might have to do this off the cuff. Because I don't think I have it right in front of me. I'm going to pull this up. Justin Fields versus Russell Wilson versus Mason Rudolph. Okay. Russell Wilson, for his career, more sacked more recently, right? Especially over the last 5 seasons, which is probably where we really want to evaluate this. But Russell Wilson, over the duration of his career, has been sacked about 8.25. 8.27. So that's very high. That's still higher than Ben Roethlisberger during the Bruce Arians era, of which he took 215 sacks in 5 seasons. We also said Russ with 560 sacks in the NFL. Like, a lot of the guys that have taken more also played closer to 20 years, like Tom Brady. Also played over 200 games. He was the only guy that wasn't in the top 10 all-time NFL history, but yet was top 10 sacks that hadn't played 200 games to this date. Okay, so that's Russell Wilson. He took a sacks 8.94, so just under 9. I will tell you, when I pull this number up for Fields, that Fields' numbers were down last year with the Steelers as well, and maybe that's Arthur Smith, trying to get rid of the ball just a little bit faster. But maybe it's still not what they were looking for. Mason, surprisingly, even with the Titans in that experience last year, he took 11 sacks, 5 starts, 8 games appeared in. He had 228 attempts for 1,530 yards, 9 touchdowns to 9 interceptions. So he took 11 sacks. That was still only a 4.6 sack percentage. So the previous year, he was taking about 7.5 under center with the Steelers in only those, 3 games played. Justin Fields, with the Pittsburgh Steelers last year, 904 sack percentage. So it's higher than Wilson. That's higher than Rudolph the previous year. I think it's also higher than Kenny Pickett. I'm going to go back and pull that up. But for his career, that brought his average down. In Chicago, he was a 12.35 sack percentage, double-digit percentage, 11.89 for his career. 44 starts, 50 games appeared in. That's the problem. Even though, and he's a mobile quarterback. We could sit there and talk about how statuesque Mason Rudolph is, or how Russ doesn't have the same feet. Even Aaron Rodgers, for being the old guy that he is, 41 going on 42 years old. Aaron Rodgers' lifetime is a 6.48, and with the Jets was a 6.5. Like, he doesn't get sacked as frequently. That's kind of part of the problem here. And I know part of it is the Steelers fixing their offensive line, but the only way you can really do that and allocate picks and money to that is by not dumping it all into the quarterback position too.
100%. We're beating a dead horse with the concept that, I think again boils down to this. They had a plan that they did not. I don't even say they didn't anticipate it, right? I am positive that they had to be at least, mostly aware that somebody could outbid them for Justin Fields. But they had a plan, they had a number, they had a setup that was going to work for them. So they tried to execute that. The Jets came in and said, we're going to give him more money. And absolutely Justin Fields should take it. The narrative, he's mad at Mike Tomlin because of this, and that he felt Mike Tomlin, bull crap. He took more money because there's more money, right? I mean, only Josh Allen can say, what's $6 more million after in the end of the day? Who needs $6 more million, right? Justin Fields says $10 more million. I want $10 million more dollars. I'm taking it.
You might not have another chance to get it, like, by all means.
Exactly.
And who knows if the Steelers offered the same exact contract, but the Steelers are going around the Senior Bowl looking at all these quarterbacks, and you might have to look over your shoulder, or they bring back Fields, and then the day after they bring back Russell Wilson. Justin Fields is going to feel like a fool because his opportunity to earn even more money is by being a starting quarterback. And even if he doesn't amount to anything in New York, being a starter there for at least a year is still going to mean he makes more. Look at some of the money that was thrown to some of these guys. Who's the backup that's in Denver right now behind Bo Nix? Oh my goodness. I was like, that's the same contract Mason Rudolph just got, or Trubisky, or some of these guys still, they end up making some money. Don't kid yourself. This is still a business. We don't necessarily know what the offers were. We don't know what the plans were. The Steelers could have just very easily moved on. Maybe the agent comes back and says, you know what, do you want to match this? And they say no. And then they're the ones moving on. The perception is that Fields did because he's the one who's signing and going to another team. We don't really know all of that stuff. We could only speculate on what some of the people in the media say by their sources, I want to throw out those.
I want to say something about the media.
Yeah.
I'm going to say something about the media because I think it's important that we all understand that everything the media says is true.
That was perfect upside down.
Yes. No one lies in the media. No one ever tells a false tale. Everything is completely sourced. They listen. Look, nobody makes anything up. The media is such a hot mess anymore. Forget whether it's just the sports media and in general. Trying to find a media outlet that you can depend on to be accurate and correct and not have some level of complete bullshit in it is next to impossible.
Yeah.
At this point in time.
Yeah.
I forget whether it's news media, sports media, entertainment media.
Anything.
They're all full of shit. I'm sorry.
It's all who they're, and a lot of it's who they're cozied up to, or the point they're trying to make. I mean, I'm making the point. I've made many points against Justin Fields. I come from that slant. So if you're trying to look for something that's like sunshine and rainbows. I'm trying to be fair, at least. I do have a modicum of professionalism and integrity to it, but some people do not. They just want to say hot takes, whatever spouts out of their mouth. We know all those big names. There's one in Pittsburgh that has the initials MM. They're going to say whatever gets them ratings too, because ratings equals money for them. So let me rewind real quick. If you thought Ben Roethlisberger was being hit like a piñata during the Bruce Arians era, 215 sacks was an 8.61 percentage, just slightly under what Russell Wilson and Justin Fields took last year. It was not good. Am I saying the offensive coordinator is the problem? Hard to say that when Arthur Smith's in his first year as the offensive coordinator, but we hope not. But it has been a recurring problem with the Pittsburgh Steelers for a few seasons now. So, yeah, we'll see what else comes of this quarterback position talk. I was going to pull up the Pickett stuff just real quick. I know I ruffle some feathers with him going 4-2 to start, his campaign the same way Fields did, but it wasn't all that more impressive, really. He struggled to throw touchdowns still, too. So there's like just some embedded stuff that's in this. And his sack percentage was 6.55 with the Steelers, more in line with Mason. So for a mobile guy.
If Charles is out there and Charles is still listening to us, that's our residence Browns fan.
Yeah.
I could be wrong, but I have a lot of recollections of a lot of trash talking about Kenny Pickett. So I really want to know your feelings on the fact that Kenny Pickett's your quarterback now, whether or not he ends up playing there or not. And I'm just going to say this. It would almost warm my heart to have Russell Wilson go sign in Cleveland now.
I know, right?
Just because, like, it would almost just make me go, irony is a terrible, terrible thing, and karma comes around and whatever. Let Aaron Rodgers follow the Brett Favre path and go, and let Russell Wilson go to Cleveland just so Kenny Pickett can go, what the hell is going on in my life? What did I do so wrong that every time I run away from this guy, he keeps coming back?
Yeah, he's going to have to compete with him, which would be hilarious. And at the same time, you might have Mason starting. And I think we may have mentioned it on the last podcast or something, just the fact of, we were saying Jameis Winston, and we're like, you have Winston in a Steelers uniform. Well, let's put Mason in that uniform against one of the other former quarterbacks in a Browns uniform. Make it happen. The schedule makers will. If that's what ends up playing out, there'll be an early season game against the Cleveland Browns. I have no doubts about that. They will put that. They love their storylines. They tried to get the Russell Wilson revenge game in Denver. It didn't materialize in week 2. You had Arthur Smith go back to Atlanta in week 1. You've had the Christmas Day game against, Taylor Swift against Sierra. Like, none of that stuff is by as an accident as much as we may try and believe. So I know you're just throwing. Who's Sierra?
Taylor Swift against who's Sierra? Who's Taylor Swift? I don't understand any of that.
Yeah, I know you don't, and it's probably for the better, to be complete. So I think that's about it, Brian. And we're gonna have to start talking about maybe who the quarterback targets could be. I keep saying Dart just because it's like that's the guy that seems like he'd be most likely there if they don't make a move on the draft board. And he's got a lot of the same similar tools to Justin Fields. But he'll come cheaper and he'll come more longer term to find out if he has a higher ceiling or a lower floor. You don't know that too. It could be absolutely terrible. Maybe they take that shot. I know that's not where you want to go. You want the 0-17 parade like they did in Cleveland and Detroit. And try
I'm not
to get
sure
the
I
top
want
pick.
that. I'm just okay. Let me just keep saying the same thing. I don't want them to go 0-17. I'm just okay if they do.
Well, let's agree on one thing here. But either way of what we're looking at is paying for a quarterback. Like, you're not just going to get a quarterback that leaves another team that is a 100% bona fide starter and not be paid at least 35-40 million a year, if not more. Most of those guys are being gobbled up. You got Jordan Love's getting 50 a year. You got Tua Tagovailoa's getting 50 a year. Just name them all. I mean, Dak's up to like 60. I mean, okay, there's Dak and he throws the ball around or whatever, and still he doesn't have a lot to show for. Joe Burrow.
What's he won?
Mahomes.
Yeah, what's he won?
Josh Allen, he still hasn't won anything either, but he's an upper echelon guy. Lamar Jackson, still an upper echelon guy, but you still got a lot of mid-tier guys. I mean, Kirk Cousins, he's going to be the highest paid backup quarterback right now because that didn't work out. So there's still a lot of that floating around the league. I'm sure there's other names that could toss out there too, but the teams that seem to compete and do well are the ones that are able to play with the guy under that rookie contract. Watch out for the Commanders. Everybody was looking out for the Texans. The way you're able to add and supplement to that team when you're not sinking all the resources into like one player, or if you're the Bengals, 3 players. So I think now we don't know all the contract details, and they'll smooth it out and try and make those cap hits less so they could do whatever with Trey Hendrickson and maybe some other players. But on the offset, on the average per year, is 44% of their cap tied into 3 players. You can't do that. And the Steelers would be trending that way. They'd be trending that way with DK Metcalf. They'd be trending that way with TJ Watt. And then, of course, if they paid a Rodgers or Wilson or overpaid for those guys. There's nobody else out there to just grab. So this might be the path. Find yourself a bridge quarterback. Who's the best of those? Mason was serviceable while he was here. I would much prefer him over, let's say, Jacoby Brissett or Jameis Winston. I mean, but none of them really move the needle for you. None of them are like, let's go get it. I'm excited. Let's go buy their jersey or whatever. And I always felt Mason had a little bit more to chew off the bone. I'll leave that for another show. But is he going to do any better or worse than what, Fields or Wilson may have? It's a very hard,
probably not.
Yeah, it's a very tough debate. You're quibbling over crumbs, basically.
Yeah.
In that case,
like I'll tell you, I feel the way I feel right now in this offseason is the exact same way I felt the year before we drafted Ben. The year before, and again, the year before we went 4 and whatever to draft Ben, whatever our record was that we really stunk. We had drafted Polamalu in 2003, and then we had a horrible year, and we were in position, right? And all I remember going through the season was, good, we need a quarterback, and we're not going to get one if we keep drafting in the 20s and the lower teens. And I that's the way I feel right now. Good. Let's go ahead and roll with what we got. I am 100% on board with screw Aaron Rodgers, because as I said last time, it will cause me intestinal grief if I have to root for Aaron Rodgers next year. I'll do it, but pain. It'll hurt me. It'll hurt me, and I will be sad, and I will feel like I need to shower on a daily basis, even if I've taken one. After every game, I'm just gonna feel like I need to go shower now. And so I'm 100% on the Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer train. Let's just roll with Mason through this season, see where we end up, and make 2026 the season of joy.
Yeah, and you know what? It just aligns with the script and the people who say the NFL is fixed and it's WWE style storylines, because the draft next year in Pittsburgh, you can't line it up any more beautiful than that.
Really can't.
But the Yinzers, as much as they complain about mediocrity, as much as they say, well, Tomlin, no losing seasons. Yeah, there are people that have been born that are Steelers fans that have not seen them at the losing season back to 2003. Are they going to be able to handle that kind of? I don't think they could stomach it. I really don't. And they'll be complaining one way or another. So rip the Band-Aid off. Let's just go with it. And you know what? The other thing is too, Brian, I was thinking if this was kind of the plan, they liked somebody in this draft, that doesn't prevent them from drafted somebody next year. It might hurt them. It might hurt them in other areas. They're going to have a ton of comp picks next year. From the looks of things. That's another thing where it's not signing Rodgers or Wilson that could impact that formula. Don't touch that with a 40-foot stick. You're going to get like 3rd rounders, 4th rounders. You're going to get 4 comp picks out of this. And they're already in line. If they could get more than 4, that's the cap on it for one team. They could get like 5 or 6 from the way the formula is kind of set up now. There's not any big signings or to-dos out there. They'll be able to load up around with the, as long as they scout properly, they'll find some role players and stuff. And they'll fill in whatever areas. They'll also have money to, you got to extend TJ Watt. Do you bring is George Pickens a long-term plan? Are you going to pay 2 wide receivers?
Exactly. You just don't know. I don't know that they're not going to have a 2nd-round pick this year, because I don't know that they're not going to get a 2nd-round pick for George Pickens at some point.
Or
I don't
move
know.
Around. Yeah.
I mean, somebody, I think at The Athletic wrote an interesting article that the rest of the league has learned their lesson and is not going to trade for a Steelers wide receiver with a high pick because of Chase Claypool. That could be very true. All right,
Hey,
that could be accurate. Yep. That look, he's fleeced some guys and gotten some value for it, and I'll give him credit for that. Right now, whether Pickens is here next season or not, I don't care. Right, I really don't. If he's here, great. We'll see how it goes. I don't see them tying up a huge amount of money in George Pickens afterwards. They're not going to extend him beforehand, and we'll see what happens. But I think there will be things that occur before the draft so that they are in a position that they want to be in when the draft comes around. I still do not buy that they're going to draft a quarterback in the first round, and if they do, I will be as against it as I was when they picked Kenny Pickett. And I will continue to point out that I thought that was a bad decision. I accepted it because I knew it was going to happen, but I didn't like it.
Well, I think they still need somebody else on the roster, just a matter of who that someone else is. It's not going to be Mason and Skylar Thompson. And I know somebody's going to mention
it could be Jameis Winston. It could be Joe Flacco. It could be Jameis Winston. It could be any quarterback that they draft in the third round and below.
Yeah.
I just investing a pick in the first round. Hey, if it works out, I'll eat my words. But I haven't been wrong about the quarterbacks that I wanted to take and the ones I didn't. And I don't think I'm going to be wrong this year either.
Yeah, I know. And, we're putting a bow on this, but it's like, just imagine if Rudolph or a draft pick were to work out. They would look like the smartest people in the league. And everything begets copycat stuff. Everybody blowing all these picks to move up like Carolina did or whatever. Maybe they won't copycat as much. So, Brian, thanks for joining me once again, man. There was a lot to talk about here, even though there's not a lot to talk about at the moment. So, Steelers continue to be quiet on the free agency front. If we get some more news, we'll be jumping back in here with another episode sooner rather than later. Until then, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. My name's Joe. This is my main man, Mr. Brian E. Roach. Until next time, we encourage everyone out there to be safe, be good, and we'll catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.